Hello. Thank you for coming along to another story time adventure with another chapter of The Stars Above. There's no way to sugarcoat it. This is a difficult chapter for me to read, and I'm sure for people who have grieved the passing of loved ones, it will be a difficult chapter to listen to. But you know what? We're here to make difficult things beautiful again. That should be the new slogan. Make hard things great again and beautiful and seen in a different light. Not whatever the bullshit one we got going on right now is. I could care less. But I like that one. Make things that make you want to cry, make you want to laugh and smile. That sounds better to me. But, to each their own. Chapter 6. To hold infinity. Grief knocks uninvited, demanding unwarranted attention. A piece of our heart unwilling to have parted with is stolen. Expectance to forgive, acceptance of apologies never made. Mother, father, sister, brother, lover, friend, or foe. Loss is immeasurable. What is taken, irreplaceable. A trade tips the scale out of balance. One soul freed for another entrapped. Everything realized is taken for granted. A longing for unimportance. Memories of triviality become sanctified. Broken promises lie in the wake of one whose fight is over. New promises are made with an undoing sense of strength. Time blurs senselessly unfair. Wishing more of before, desiring less of now. Turning back proves as futile as pressing forward. We fall down, pain flows up, pushing tears from an empty chasm into a bottomless void. Choke back regret, vomit forth remorse, cry and release, beg for mercy. No one is listening, no one is answering. We wander a crowded wasteland, entirely alone. To feel is to live is to feel. A paradox born unto love feeds sorrow evermore. Hollowed spirits traverse hallowed grounds, carrying hope for a world while loathing existence. Clawing for heaven is crawling through hell. Tasting divinity is suffering humanity. Desperation pleads, why? Yet grief continues to knock, knock, knock. I woke the following morning with a newfound sense of total uncertainty. In no way bad, just unorthodox. I slept at ease through the night, unusual. Wasn't shot to attentiveness by terrible nightmares, peculiar. Hadn't opened my eyes to knots in my stomach, nor was I fixated on waves of dread, the strangest of all. Had I been experiencing content, harmony, clarity, dare I say, happiness? Those far and wide sought-after emotions only known in fairy tale. Was it all a dream? I wondered. Had a fallen star come to me the night before, bending time and space in search of her other half? Was this in fact a destiny? Or was Zoltar a con artist? I scanned the room in search of irregularities, glitches in a system on the fritz. There I woke in a slum, having all the privileges of a careless millionaire spoiled with spiritual vitality. That sad little studio hadn't felt so sad, nor seemed so little. My abysmal circumstances were trivial and irrelevant. I felt like a newborn receiving his first glimpses of an undiscovered world unraveling before him, until seeing Monkey's smug face staring. "Don't look at me like that," I said, as if assuming I'm experiencing an episode. "I don't need your projections tainting the mood. It's rude and in bad taste. What you may refer to as a hysteric fit of mania, I'll chalk up as being no less than miraculous, you uncultured swine. Be happy. For once I woke without wishing otherwise, and if I don't wake, neither do you." I kept rambling while scrounging for grounds to pour a drip coffee. "Don't worry about me, small fry," I said. "I'm certain, at least, semi-certain enough in my capabilities to differentiate real from not. That is, of course, unless you're able to prove my lunacy guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, which you aren't. See here, the events of yesterday, circumstantial. The moment shared, conclusive. The evidence of last night's proceedings indicate objection." Overruled, monkey. I drove my cane down with a gaveling thud. I shan't have you slander my name within the paint-peeling hall of this courtroom. I must insist that all accusations of self-doubt be struck from the record and deduced as hearsay. I paced with calm precision before him, as if in enlightening sequence from a beautiful mind. Each second spent with Celine floated like calculations before me. I swirled the last of my coffee and watched as the sludge settled on the final sip, fixating on the remaining grounds like a master reading the tea leaves. Interesting, I said. I present to you Exhibit A. Is that not, in fact, her face there smeared in the remains at the bottom of my mug? Watson, my boy, the world is full of obvious things which nobody, by any chance, ever observes. Curious indeed. The attention to detail is clear as any omen, monkey. I rest my case, and knew you stood no chance as a porcelain prosecutor. The likes of a figurine are best suited for a shelf, not a stand. My head spun all morning in attempts to make sense of it, but I've always found things which seem to make the most amount of sense happen to appear the least bit sensical. Perhaps what happened the night before didn't need explanation or any obsessive reasoning behind it. Serendipitous chance wouldn't be such if it weren't serendipitous. Although, my mind tends to wander as it grasps for straws out of desperation to rationalize those unlikely, beautiful, and magical situations as being too good to be true. But what made it so good was just how true it all was. This uncharted territory provided insight on one's deepest self, a grip to the past of which I'd never known possible. The might in our beliefs is only strong as the love... I thought I heard Nessie out there. That had nothing to do with me messing up. The might in our beliefs is only as strong as the love we carry, and against all odds, thy love shall never falter. The chime from a text rang in my hand, so I chucked the phone clear across the room. People know better than to reach out to me. Could it be? I wondered, peeking with suspicion from behind the bathroom door. A second chime. They never text twice, let alone once. I approached with caution, poking at it with the cane. Another chime, a third of which, unheard of which. Preposterous. It must be her. I picked it up. 3 texts from Bird. My heart skipped like a scratched record. What might these possibly read? Could she be asking me to accompany her on a decadent brunch? Maybe Celine is sharing in on bits of the residual madness left over from our evening together. Or, perhaps the furthest stretch, dearly beloved is professing her divine affection for me, seeing as how we caused a rift in the space-time continuum, and the cosmos collapsed in on itself whilst sharing celestial body. Alas, it was none of those. The text read, "Hey, just in case you didn't take a picture of the schedule yesterday, you work at noon. Also, you're a bird." I peered to the time, 11:14 a.m. "Christ almighty," I yelled. "I'm late, monkey, you slimy bastard." No good ever comes from standing trial before an obnoxiously outspoken chimp. There Celine stood, duster in hand, swatting a hat rack, just as real, beautiful, odd, and chaotic. She turned, fumbling about, a great deity tripping over her own shoelaces. Oh no, I thought. She saw me. Be cool. Say something suave and irresistible. I'd blurt aloud, "What's up, you long-legged flamingo?" She laughed, quickly covering her mouth. "Don't do that," I said, slapping her hand away. "Do what?" she asked. "Never hide your smile. To cover such a beautiful thing would be a heinous crime, an absolute shame to go without seeing." "Pardon? How about I take this duster and clean your clock, you bobble-headed pigeon?" "Please do. The less attention I pay it, the more time I'm given." "It looks like you forgot your shirt," she said, looking me up and down. "Must be back on the shipwreck you swam from." "Get a grip," I replied. "Some people wear tank tops. I wear vests. I'm a fashionista." "Okie dokie, artichoke. Though a bit promiscuous, wouldn't you say?" Says the French maid. "Check out these bonish pectorals. Take your one good peek. Afterwards, it's $5 a show, baby. Get it while it's cheap." "You're ridiculous." "And your skirt's too short. You could crochet several yards onto that rag." "Oh, absolutely. My needlepoint is out back in my double-parked carriage." "What are you two knuckleheads doing?" Thea said, twirling between the aisles in a dance. I'm just trying to make an honest buck in this sad world, I replied. Oh, is that so? Thea said, turning to Celine. You two best be careful. They're watching you like hawks. Who? I asked. The council, she said, referring to the owner and her two henchwomen. What'd you think? You were just gonna strut in here a dime, like you own the place? The only guy in a shop of girls wanting to jump your bones? You put a target on Celine's back. Pete's almighty, I forgot we were here. What a scandal. Those scumbags had it out for her the second I arrived, and it became an issue. Celine's face washed over with worry, as if she'd done something horribly wrong. Makes no difference to me, Thea said. We can't let the minions ruin our good time. Don't y'all fret a thing. I'll take care of it. Say, my birthday's this weekend. I'd love for the two of you to join my boyfriend and I for dinner. Yeah, Celine said, lighting back up. Then it's settled. We'll iron out the details later. I'm thinking Ty. What do you think we should get her? Celine whispered as Thea walked away. Let's talk about it at your place. Later, I said. It's best we act casual and sell some clothes. There's nothing to see here. We don't want these jackals getting any funny ideas. We'd head there after work, and I'd bond with Fizzgig as we fished for toy mice. She likes you, Celine said. She doesn't like anyone. Probably digs my scent, I said. Cigarette butts at the bottom of a yard sale purse. Don't forget burnt hair singed onto an old curling iron marked for a quarter, but they'll take a nickel if you play your cards right. Thanks, Bird. You get me, I said, taking my seat at the foot of her bed. So, what do you think you'll get Thea? She asked, picking up her guitar to join me. I'll swing by that taxidermy shop and pick her up a stag hoof. She's got crazy deer energy. She'll love that. I don't know what to get her yet. Bake something witchy like earthworm cupcakes, or paint something special. I grabbed Celine's sketchbook and fixated on her drawings. They'd been so familiar. You know, my mother had creatures too, I said. Not quite like yours, but similar. When experiencing an episode, she'd sit for hours and sketch or solder them onto wood. They were beautifully eerie and had such strange personality. She would have adored you, Bird. Icarus, she said softly. What happened to her? Responding was hard. It wasn't something spoken of to myself, let alone anyone else. I was at work, I muttered. Evan texted me saying she was coughing blood. An hour later, she couldn't breathe and was in an ambulance. She'd been battling her health for years. Perhaps I was in denial, not believing it serious enough to leave work for. It wasn't until he called and said the doctors were doing all they could that I listened, but it was too late. I couldn't meet Celine's eyes, being unable to express the magnitude of regret in such selfish inaction, having felt consumed by a morbid shame. They lived far, I said, my voice beginning to crack. It took a while to get there. My brothers were in the waiting room. I took Stephen and Nathan in my arms. Mom will be okay. She's strong, I whispered. She'd been put on a ventilator. Medications weren't working, and her heartbeat was fading. The doctor spoke as artificially as a machine keeping her alive, toneless and automated. She was put into a medically induced coma just minutes before I arrived. I went to her room alone. The doctors were laughing and smiling right in front of me, talking about a new show while swapping my mother's IVs. The lack of compassion and insensitivity of those rabid fucking animals. I wanted to scream at the top of my lungs. Pangs of remorse boiled. Celine could feel my legs trembling and noticed each fist clenching. She placed a hand over my knee. Look at me, Icarus, she said. You're okay. Just breathe. I'm right here. I'd never felt safer being vulnerable than at her side, under her touch. It's hard to describe, I said. I was stiff as a board, analyzing every detail like an out-of-body experience. The beep of the heart rate monitor, click of the ventilator, each rise and fall of her chest. They were like ticks and talks to some fucked-up clock. I wondered if it hurt, if she could hear my voice, or at least knew me to be there. I took her hand and kissed her on the cheek, saying that I loved her. I couldn't remember the last time I had. I had to leave, feeling seconds away from a panic attack. But before I could even light a cigarette, tears poured in ways they never had. Thoughts raced so fast it felt like short-circuiting. I questioned everything and begged for answers, finding none. It wasn't fair. It never was. I was burrowing into wounds never healed, considering the responsibility to our little brothers. Evan and I weren't given the chance to grieve her passing, an understanding Celine selflessly provided space for, a heartbreaking memory of her own. being relived in my eyes. When I got back to the room, she flatlined, I said, and nurses ran in to give CPR. Fight, Mom, fight, I kept repeating. You fought your entire life. Fight one last time. After a shot of adrenaline, she stabilized, but those brittle threads of hope began withering away. I put on a brave face in the waiting room, taking Evan in my arms to whisper, "Go be with her. Tell Mom what you need her to hear." The kids kept asking, "Is Mom going to be all right, Icarus?" It took everything to keep from falling apart, to say that she was just sick, that the doctors would make her better, while fearing they'd never see her, hear her, or hold her ever again. Evan came back in tears, having known what was coming, even if he hadn't wished to believe it. It was late, and the kids were restless. Evan didn't want to leave, but he had to be strong for the boys and care for them first. I took Steven's baby blanket and Aiden's stuffed animal, so that she could have them at her side. I told them Mom would be all right as guilt plagued me, if only for their momentary comfort. By the time I got back, she'd flatline again and nurses swarmed the room. I stared blankly as the compressions began. This can't be it, I thought. Not now. Not yet. There was so much to tell her, so much I hadn't been able to say. A doctor approached. "Are you the one taking care of the paperwork for her remains?" he asked me. I glanced over as my mother fought to survive, seeing his lips curl into a quirky grin. I wanted to bash his fucking skull in with the same clipboard he sought to wash his hands clean of her life. "She isn't dead yet," I muttered as my knees shook and nails dug into Aiden's stuffed animal. I paused. "I'm sorry, Bird. It's just..." "You have nothing to be sorry about, Icarus," Celine replied. Being in that moment was reminiscent of déjà vu, as if in feeling so nurtured at her side was because I'd somehow been there before, a paralleling universe of which our roles had been reversed, and Celine would share such a story with me, another time and faraway place where I'd kept her safe, at peace, and loved in the same way she kept me now. The doctor walked away as she'd stabilize again, I said. A nurse noticed and took his place at my side. "I'm so sorry this is happening to you," she said. There was a sorrow in her voice and presence which felt calming, much like being here with you, Bird. Celine smiled, taking my hand in hers. Only a couple minutes had passed, I said, before her body shook into cardiac arrest. The nurses fought to pull me away, and I just kept screaming for her. And after being stabilized for the last time, another doctor pulled me aside, explaining that if they continued to revive her, she'd become brain dead. He'd hand over the "do not resuscitate" form, wanting me to sign off on killing my own mother. I refused, not wanting to believe him, insisting they do more. My selfishness was haunting. I didn't make it in time, having failed her as a son. All night I'd witnessed her drown in her own blood, gasping for life's final breath. 3 times I'd seen death knock, and 3 times hope dwindled. I didn't know how to tell my... I didn't know how I'd tell my brothers that Mom wasn't coming home. My heart was breaking, knowing that soon I'd be the one to shatter theirs. For an eternity, my mother suffered the pain of her own existence, and yet I had to be the one strong enough to end it. I held the form as tears fell over my signature. I hadn't written the surname that I'd been cursed to carry as a bastard son. No, it wasn't one ever used again. I signed off as Icarus McHale, the name my mother gave me. I returned to her side, closing the curtain behind me before taking out my trinkets, those once belonging to her. A ring of skeleton keys, broken pocket watch, spade Zippo, and her father's cigarette case. Closing them within her left hand, I placed Aiden's stuffed animal in her right, then dampened her hair to drape Stephen's baby blanket over her head. I removed the blood-soaked sheet, undressed her gown, and sprinkled loose tobacco over her chest in prayer. I lit a stick of Palo Santo, humming hymns while wafting smoke over her body, then placed the stick in her hand between my trinkets and clenched it tight within my own. I blew whispers of an undying love until the ember burnt its brightest, then drove the stick into the palm of my left. Flesh burned as I'd twist further, until the ember succumbed to ash, until it was believed it would remain within the wound, imprinted beneath the skin, infusing her spirit with mine. Once more I'd torched the wood, marking a line of ash down each of her eyes and chin, then marked myself. Celine turned my hand over to find the fresh scarring, eyeing it with intent. She knew how hard it was for me to continue, having brought light to the moment while cheering me up. "You know," she said, "I totally took you for the witch doctor type." "It's funny you should say so," I replied. "I've many credible sources whose research papers refer to me directly as a shadow man from The Princess and the Frog." "What, pray tell, were they researching?" "The potency of black magic in odd skeletal frames and freakishly long limbs. If not for being born into Slender Man's body, I may have had to pick a different profession. Voodoo surely would have been off the table." "I wonder if you'd still have wound up here." "Who knows? I haven't made any previous assumptions as somewhere out there waited a bird who could teach me to fly. Alas, here we are. My dear, I was destined here." While confronting my mother's passing was tremendously difficult, there was no need to convince myself to be brave, for Celine became my courage. There was no need to feel shame and admittance of guilt, for she'd embody my vulnerability, and no fear remained in the dark, for her love was an ever-burning beacon of light. So, I pressed forward in ways never before known. "My mother brought me into the world alone," I said, "but we'd be together as time came to depart it. She'd always been so quick to blame herself for our pain, and perhaps that guilt was warranted, but she never realized just how strong she'd shaped us, how the torment we suffered through was so vital in who we became. I swore to make the rest of my life count, and prove the man she raised was great, that we'd never been broken. She lived in fear of leaving her boys behind, having known she'd die in fear all the same. But now she'd pass experiencing the love she birthed unto this world, and find that peace she forever sought. I told her that Stephen and Aidan would be led home to her light, and that there was nothing left for her to fear, for we would always be together. I removed my trinkets and placed her hand against my chest, needing her to feel the beat of her firstborn's heart one last time. But as I went to lay it back down, her fingers tensed and intertwined with the owl necklace she'd given me on Christmas, just 1 month prior. I knew it to be true then and there, that she'd hung on so dearly to each passing second, strong enough to bear, strong enough to fight, so that I could be at her side. In her final hour, my mother gifted me the time needed to accept and surrender. I rang for the nurse, took my mother's hand, and whispered, "I love you, Mom. I have always loved you." I laid my head over her chest to feel the final thumps of her heart. It rose beneath me as the nurse switched the ventilator off and slowly fell for the last time. I released her to the unconditional love of creation itself, just as she'd birthed into me. I cut 2 locks of her hair for keepsakes, then gathered the sprinkled tobacco before rolling it into the finest cigarette to ever rest upon my lips. I gently graced my thumb over her palm and gave my mother one last kiss. Leaving was strange, yet in some way felt right. Turning back with a smile, I whispered, "You're free now. Soar home." I walked out and raised that cigarette to the sky, welcoming her to a place amongst the stars above, no longer bound to pain by flesh and blood. With each drag I prayed for days ahead, strength bestowed upon my brothers, and her love to grow within them. I returned the tobacco to the earth, burying the leaf within the soil, and drove home. Evan hadn't expected me, and I knew knocking on that door would change his reality forever. We stood in silence before I reached into my pocket and held my hand out to his, opening it to reveal the locks of hair. His eyes watered as he wrapped his arms around me. We'd never shared a moment so intimate together. "Everything's going to be all right, Evan. It has to," I told him. He choked up, crying. "I know," he said. There was one thing kept from Celine about my mother's passing, never having told another soul. For 2 weeks following her death, every sleepless night was spent writing of it, that process being the only thing to help manage pain. It was in that period when Evan found the journal entry my mother wrote, the one regarding Arcturus. While profound, I stashed it and returned to writing. After finishing what had been the hardest thing I'd ever written, I inserted a USB drive into the laptop to secure a backup of the document, but as I did, it crashed, and the drive was empty, my heart breaking along with it. Hours were spent trying to fix it, taking it apart, putting it back together, and researching every problem to no avail. I was shattered, believing she'd been taken from me all over again. I pulled open the desk drawer, picked up her note, and read it without anything left to lose. Arcturus, I wondered. What the hell was she on about? Arcturus is the brightest star in the northern sky. It resides in the constellation of Boots and can be found trailing the Big Dipper's panhandle. That's the extent of what was learned. Nothing else mattered, only where to find it. I walked into the backyard, looking to Arcturus, dropped to my knees like Moses on the mountain, and began to beg. Please, I'd repeat with tears pouring, don't take this from me. Not this, not now. Just then, I watched as a bright light began creeping towards Arcturus, having figured it was a satellite in orbit. That is, until it stopped just before the star, then circled it. It must have encompassed Arcturus 10 times before halting dead in its tracks, then shot off into the universe at an insane speed. I was as sharp and clear-minded as ever, in complete belief of an incomprehensible disbelief. Could it have been my mother's spirit? I wondered. Was she up there blitzed off her rocker on fat lines of space dust behind the wheel of an alien aircraft, ripping donuts around a fucking star? I haven't a schizophrenic's notion in hell what was being looked at, but I saw it, clear as any omen. I ran into the garage, opened my laptop, pressed the power button, and it started up without a hitch. I grabbed my keys, told Evan not to worry, jumped in my van, and beelined it towards nowhere. In leaving the Mojave Desert, Arcturus was chased north up Interstate 395 without a clue as to why. I drove through the night and into the hours just before dawn, watching, waiting, until light broke over the horizon of a small town in the distance. I pulled over at the sight of a smug-faced, hairy hitchhiker on his surfboard, and as the blood-red sun rose over the valley of Truckee Meadows, illuminating a glow of pink and gold over the biggest little city in the world, I knew without a shadow of doubt that this was where I was supposed to be. I don't know exactly what divine intervention looks like, but certainly have a pretty good idea of it. How symbolic it is to weep from the window of our soul. Silence ensued as I'd attempt to wipe the tears building in each eye, only for Celine to remove my hand. It's okay, Icarus, she whispered. You don't have to hide them. I chuckled, humoring the parallels. In a much gentler way, it was no different than slapping her hand away from covering that smile, one I'd cry lifetimes for. I shared a story Celine already knew, my spirit's bird, Thunder Dreamer. She'd seen, felt, and lived it all before. But even so, it was one she'd lend her heart to, having known it must be spoken for myself. I truly believed to be past the worst of it, but my mother's death was a mere stepping stone in reaching the depths of conflict still waiting to resurface. However, at Celine's side, those crashing waves of dread receded into calm, nurturing waters. There she sat, a shared soul split through tragedy, with selflessness beyond measure. As if lost in translation, within her eyes lay pathways of discovery I wasn't yet ready to comprehend, but at the time, one thought lingered more than any other. If my mother hadn't passed, would I have come to recognize the importance of my life, or have known to cherish where such a path had led me now? To have followed that map in the stars above, leading to the X-marked spot at the foot of Celine's bed. I want you to have something, Icarus, she said, bridging the rift in my realities. Celine grabbed a shoebox from beneath her altar, then opened it to reveal a diary, cards, photograph, and other items of beloved importance. This is all I have left of my mother, she said. I choked up, knowing how precious the trust in our connection must have been simply to see it. Ever carefully, she removed a sand dollar. It was pristine, having stood the test of a delicate mortality. This belonged to her, she said gently, and I want you to have it. Celine placed it in my left hand, and I was blanketed by a warmth unbeknownst to my life thus far. It burrowed within my ash-scarred palm, as if bearing the world's weight. I understood its importance to her, for such a gesture left me speechless in expressing its importance to me. She picked up her guitar, plucking softly at each string while humming hymns like those shared from my mother. In each chord I could hear the echoes of eternity, like oceans in a seashell. Celine had taken my heart in her hand, bound by celestial strand, as lifetimes passed in an hourglass of cosmic sand. This remnant of her mother was a symbol of love in its entirety, primordial to nature, etheric to existence, and eternal to time, as if grasping the impossibility of infinity itself. As I held it, falling back into the sounds of song, I began to fade within Celine's selfless soul, waking to a dream long since forgotten, one spent with my mother as each wave broke, scouring softly through the sand beneath our toes, where we too once found infinity itself. Grieving is a bitch, you know, but we get through it. We just keep on keeping on. It's a dog-eat-dog world. I know that it feels, like you're impossibly alone when you're grieving. But a wise woman once told me, know that you are seen, even in moments felt invisible to yourself, by love. I thought that was pretty damn profound, Because when you are grieving, you might as well be fucking dead. And it's love that brings you back, right? That boat couldn't have been any fucking louder. I don't know if you hear it on this, because I have a professional microphone, because I'm a professional reader. It says noise canceling, but I didn't set it to the strongest because I wanted the birds to be heard, Anyways, thanks for getting through that with me. Apologies if I stumbled about and my mind went in jambalaya mode. Sometimes it's hard to read stuff, especially when it's written in Crayola crayon. As much as I love Icarus for how nonsensical he is, he's made it really difficult to read this Crayola crayon story. But yeah, come on back next time for a less difficult emotional chapter to get through. It's a good one. The next one's a good one. It's got some profound stuff in it. Life lessons, Stuff to keep in your back pocket. Oh. Catch you later, alligator. After a while, crocodile.